Haynes night, everybody.
I live in a little Cooper Young bungalow that I got some years ago. And in the back, I've built stages. I entertain a lot. I have a lot of people over. There are anywhere between 5 and 40 musicians that come to my house at any particular call. For 7 years, I had this thing called the Stone Soup Social Club, where artists, poets, writers, musicians would all come and just contribute to whatever the night ended up being. Some of you who are in here have been there, and it's nice to see faces who have done that. I came home to Memphis with the last few dollars that I could buy a one-way Greyhound bus ticket, 2 granola bars, and a bag of chips from El Paso, Texas. Back in May of 2002. I just left Costa Rica and Mexico after 6 months of going to Spanish language immersion schools, and I was coming home to Memphis after a 20-year career that on paper is people's ideal and dream career to have. It all started at the Mud Island Amphitheater of cleaning cigarette butts up back in the inaugural season of 1982. That lasted about a day until I became a stagehand at the Mud Island Amphitheater. From there, after that stagehand summer, I ended up going to the general manager and saying, look, I'll make you a deal, you teach me what you do, and I'll work for you for free. He had me reading contracts of all the bands that were coming in. From there, for the next 3 years, I read lots of contracts and was in just about every management capacity in that particular place. And then I got burnt out on it. Started managing bands, the band called The Generics, a band called Human Radio. It was me that was taking the money at the doors. It was me that had the clicker. It was me that was putting these bands in. I was the one to produce the original Beale Street Music Festival, and on and on. It's really hard for me to put all this into a single context, but understand that I did end up going back into the theater business. From there, I ran the Starwood Amphitheater in Nashville, moved to the Sanger Theater in New Orleans, where I ran that stage for 5 years, and basically had a career where I was surrounded by, that's my 3-minute notice, I was surrounded by the biggest stars in the world. It was not unusual to be in my office and have whatever star that was on there just come and hang out of my office, or be backstage and look at a television star and say, hey, what are you doing here? And she'd tell me, well, I'm just dating the lead singer of the band. Or the biggest political people in the world. I met a president, had all kinds of great adventures in New Orleans in particular, with basically an all-access pass to everything that New Orleans has to offer for 5 years. The cost that I paid for this was working all the time. I ate 10 Thanksgiving Day meals backstage by myself at my dirty desk, but I'd always make it home for Christmas. By train, plane, or automobile, and it's still in the family lore known as Haynes and the Drive-By Christmas. I'd come in Christmas Eve, and then by Christmas Day, or the next day, I would have to go back to whatever job I was doing. Maybe I lost a marriage that way, I don't know. But I finally got burnt out on it after having left New York City the day before the towers got hit. And I just went, it's just not worth it. This is just not worth it. I'm going home to Memphis. So I came home to Memphis, but I didn't hang out at the bars anymore. I didn't hang out at the backstages anymore. I was just totally too burnt out on that. All my friends who I managed in bands for years, they were all raising families by that time, so I started at the Evelyn's Patio. And at the Evelyn's Patio, after a few years, I met a realtor who found me this Cooper Young house. She calls me her most intense client. And for reasons, being because I was the guy in charge of all this stuff. There was not a forklift, there was not a stagehand, there was not a catering thing, there was not a policeman, there was not an escort to the airport that I was not in charge of for years. If a show went on, I did it. Ice shows, ballets, rock shows, I mean, you name it. It's crazy how much. So, here I'm on a bus, a Greyhound bus, coming from El Paso back to Memphis, and I'm just thinking, oh my God, what a weird 20-year life I've had. What a weird time this has been, hanging out in a backstage office and people like Dolly Parton popping in going, hey, I'm Dolly, who are you? Or Howie Mandel, or going out the backstage door and seeing Courtney Cox there and just sharing a cigarette with her going, what are you doing here? And she's going, well, I'm the lead singer of the Counting Crows. Hanging out and seeing people that you just absolutely wouldn't imagine. I met George Bush, Norman Schwarzkopf. Sports stars are coming, using my name to get into the backstage door. Before Reggie White played in the Super Bowl down in New Orleans. He's looking for me and using my name. And I'm thinking about this all on the bus coming back to Memphis, and I just can't believe it. I've had dinner with Wolfgang Puck. I had an uninterrupted 2 hours at a bar with just myself and Kathleen Turner, of all people. It just happened. It's just this weird stuff that happened. But I'm coming back home to Memphis going, none of that matters. None of it. It really doesn't matter. What matters was being able to have a place where I can have my friends over. Because if a 9/11 would happen to me, or the bus, or the bad diagnosis, or whatever it is, I don't want to be in a strange city. I want to be home in Memphis. Now, those of you who have been in Memphis know it's this weird 1 degree of separation thing. It's crazy. If we start talking, folks over there are going to know about folks over there. You're going to find connections. And here's one of the things that was the biggest connection for me, is that my realtor, I was her most intense client, and I were together for about 6 weeks until we found that little Cooper Young bungalow that I live in. And I'm on the patio of Evelyn's. And I hear a rumor about her. And I call her up. This is right before we signed the contract. I call her up. And I go, Stephanie, do you know that you and I are related in this weird kind of Memphis way? I don't even know what our relationship can be called. We're like each other's step-spouse. She's going, Haynes, step-spouse? I don't even know what you're talking about. I go, I don't even know what the term for it is. But do you know that our exes are married to each other? So that's me coming home to Memphis. Thank you very much.